My family invited me to an upscale Thanksgiving dinner only to humiliate me by forgetting my order. They mocked my weight, thinking I'd take it like always. Instead, I waited for a toast to honesty, then revealed my sister's fiancé's affair, destroying their perfect evening instantly. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The shivering wouldn't stop. It wasn't just the fever, though the thermometer on my nightstand read a stubborn 101.4 degrees. It was the sheer exhaustion that had settled into the marrow of my bones. I was 3 days into a severe bout of bronchitis, the kind that makes every breath feel like inhaling crushed glass. My small apartment was dark, save for the blue, clinical glow of my dual monitor setup. As a forensic accountant, I didn't get sick days. Fraud didn't sleep, and apparently neither did I, but tonight, I wasn't hunting down embezzled funds for a corporate client. I was doing a favor that had been demanded, not requested. My phone buzzed on the desk, vibrating against the wood. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, my eyes burning. I knew exactly what she wanted. She wouldn't be calling to ask if my fever had broken or if I needed groceries. She would be calling to ensure I was still on schedule with the wedding audit. My younger sister Nancy was getting married to Derek. Derek, the golden boy, Derek, the entrepreneur. My parents were ecstatic. Finally, one of their daughters was marrying well. To ensure Nancy started this marriage on the right foot, my father had bullied me into reviewing Derek's business ledgers and their joint wedding budget. "You're good with numbers, Alina," he had grunted last Sunday. "Make sure they aren't overspending on flowers. Use that eagle eye of yours for something useful for a change." I coughed, a deep, rattling sound that tore through my chest, and reached for the mouse. I ignored the phone. I just wanted to finish this review, send the email, and pass out for 12 hours. I opened the folder Derek had shared with me. It was messy, receipts scanned sideways, bank statements mixed with catering invoices. Typical for a small business owner who thought details were beneath him. I began categorizing the expenses, my fingers moving on autopilot. Florist, venue deposit, tuxedo rental. Then I saw it. It was a small transaction, buried in the miscellaneous business expenses subfolder of his credit card statement. A recurring charge of $200, labeled simply as J Consulting. It looked innocuous, boring even, but in my line of work, innocuous is a red flag. I cross-referenced the date. The first charge appeared 6 months ago. The most recent one was yesterday. I clicked on the transaction details. The merchant code didn't match a consulting firm. It matched a floral boutique and gift service, one that specialized in luxury, same-day deliveries. Why would he label a gift service as consulting? My curiosity, honed by years of catching liars and lies, overrode my sickness. I ran a quick search on the merchant ID. It linked back to a specific app used for discreet gifting. I had seen this before in divorce cases. It was a way to send presents without the recipient's name appearing on the main bill. I shouldn't have dug deeper. I should have closed the laptop. But I couldn't. I logged into the shared cloud drive Derek had carelessly given me full admin access to. He probably didn't even realize that giving me access to the budget folder gave me access to his synced device backups if he hadn't partitioned the drive correctly. And Derek was tech illiterate. There, in a folder labeled Receipts Backup, were the screenshots. He wasn't keeping receipts for taxes. He was keeping screenshots of thank you messages. "The bracelet is beautiful. D almost makes me feel guilty about Nancy." Almost. The sender was listed as Jennifer. My heart hammered against my ribs, harder than it had from the fever. Jennifer. I knew a Jennifer. Nancy's maid of honor was named Jennifer. My old college roommate was named Jennifer. I clicked the next image. It was a photo. A selfie of Derek and a woman, their faces pressed together, grinning. The background was the interior of his car, the same car he had driven to my parents' house last week. The woman wasn't Nancy. It was Jennifer from the gym my sister went to. The one Nancy had been trying to set me up with because she's single and desperate, just like you, Alina. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. I felt physically ill, a nausea that had nothing to do with the virus in my system. I was looking at 6 months of documented infidelity. Gifts, hotel rooms, dates, all funded by the account I was supposed to be balancing for their wedding. The phone buzzed again, this time a text from my mother. "Pick up, we need to discuss the menu for Thursday. You better not still be sick. We are going to Le Jardin, and I won't have you ruining the aesthetic with a runny nose." I looked at the text. Then I looked at the photo of Derek kissing another woman. The betrayal wasn't just that he was cheating. It was that I was sitting here, destroying my health to ensure their financial future, while he was spending that future on someone else. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen, the evidence of Derek's infidelity glowing in high definition. My mother's text message still lingered on my phone screen, demanding my presence, demanding my compliance, demanding that I act the part of the dutiful, invisible prop in their perfect family tableau. "You better not still be sick." The words echoed in my head, cold and sharp. There was no concern, no "take care of yourself, honey," just a warning not to embarrass them. I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were trembling, but the feverish haze that had clouded my mind for days was beginning to lift, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. I took a sip of lukewarm water, the liquid soothing my raw throat. I decided to call her back. "Hello," my mother's voice was sharp, impatient. I could hear the clinking of silverware in the background. They were already eating dinner without me, likely discussing the wedding. "Hi, Mom," I rasped, my voice sounding like gravel. "I got your text." "Oh, good, you sound terrible," she observed, not with sympathy, but with annoyance. "You need to pull yourself together by Thursday, Alina. Le Jardin is very exclusive. We're celebrating the engagement officially with the extended family. Uncle Jerry is flying in. You cannot show up looking like a zombie." "I have bronchitis, Mom. The doctor said I need rest." "We all have things we need, Alina." She cut me off, her tone dismissive. "Nancy needs a sister who supports her. Derek has been so generous inviting you to this dinner. It's a $150 a plate prix-fixe menu. The least you can do is show up, dress nicely for once, and smile. And please wear something that fits. You know how you get when you're stressed, you tend to bloat." I closed my eyes, the familiar sting of her criticism washing over me. It was always like this. My weight, my clothes, my job, my lack of a husband, it was all fodder for their disappointment. "I'll be there," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Good, and don't be late. 6:00 p.m. sharp. We're doing a toast right at the beginning," she said, and then, without a goodbye, she hung up. I set the phone down. I looked back at my computer. I reopened the folder. I had everything. The timestamps, the locations, the incriminating photos, the mocking texts about Nancy. "She's so clueless, it's cute," Derek had written in one message from 2 weeks ago. I could have emailed it to Nancy right then. I could have called my father, but I knew how that would play out. They would shoot the messenger. They would accuse me of jealousy, of trying to sabotage Nancy's happiness because I was bitter and alone. Derek would spin a lie, claim they were fake, or that I had doctored them. He was charming, and I was the difficult one. No, an email wasn't enough. I needed to be there. I needed to see his face. I spent the next 2 days resting aggressively. I drank gallons of tea, took my antibiotics religiously, and slept in 12-hour blocks. I needed my strength. On Wednesday night, Derek called me. "Hey, Alina." His voice was smooth, oozing that fake camaraderie he used whenever he wanted something. "Just checking in on those numbers. Did you get a chance to finalize the budget spreadsheet? Nancy is freaking out about the florist deposit." "I'm working on it," I lied, typing away on a different window where I was organizing his chat logs into a printable PDF. "I'll have the full report ready for you guys on Thursday. I can bring it to dinner." "Perfect," he said. "You're a lifesaver, Elle. Seriously, I know your parents give you a hard time, but I appreciate it. It was almost convincing. Almost. If I hadn't seen the text where he called me, Nancy's frumpy accountant sister, to his mistress, I might have believed him. No problem, Derek, I said, keeping my voice flat. I want Nancy to have exactly the life she deserves. That's the spirit, he laughed. See you at Le Jardin. Try not to order the whole menu, okay? Kidding. He hung up, chuckling at his own wit. I stared at the phone. He felt safe. He felt untouchable. He thought I was just the quiet, chubby sister who crunched numbers and took insults with a bowed head. He thought he had fooled everyone. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I don't just count numbers, I make them talk. And tomorrow, his numbers were going to scream. To understand why I didn't just scream at them over the phone, you have to understand the dynamic. You have to understand what I had given up for them. I was the eldest, but Nancy was the star. From the moment she was born, she was the delicate flower, the one who needed protection and praise. I was the sturdy oak, expected to weather the storms and provide the shade, but never admired. When I was 22, freshly graduated and ready to start my life in Chicago, my father had a heart attack. Who moved back home to run the family hardware store while he recovered? I did. Nancy was in college, rushing a sorority. We couldn't disturb her studies. When Nancy got a DUI 3 years ago, who paid for the lawyer so my parents wouldn't have to dip into their retirement funds? I did. I drained my savings account, money I had been putting aside for a down payment on a condo. I made the wire transfer quietly, and my parents never thanked me. They just praised Nancy for getting through such a tough time. I had spent my entire adult life trying to buy their love with loyalty. I was their retirement plan, their crisis manager, their emotional punching bag. And in return, I got passive-aggressive comments about my pant size and exclusion from the fun family trips because hiking isn't really your thing, Alina. And then came Derek. Derek entered the picture 2 years ago. He was slick, too slick. He claimed to be a wealth consultant for high-net-worth individuals. He drove a leased BMW, wore a Rolex that I was 90% sure was a high-quality replica, and spoke in buzzwords. Synergy, leverage, crypto assets. My parents fell for it hook, line, and sinker. To them, he was the son they never had. He played golf with my dad and complimented my mother's cooking with a charm that felt rehearsed. But from day one, Derek made my skin crawl. It wasn't just the arrogance, it was the way he looked at me. Not with attraction, God no, but with a predatory assessment. The first time we met, he didn't ask about my interests. He asked, so, forensic accounting, lucrative field, right? What's your hourly? You own your place or rent. He was sizing me up. He was calculating my net worth. Last Thanksgiving, he had cornered me in the kitchen. You know, Alina, he had said, swirling his scotch. You have a lot of equity sitting in that retirement fund of yours. You should let me manage it. I could triple it in 6 months. Help you lose some of that financial weight. He had laughed, poking my arm. And maybe you could afford a makeover. Nancy is worried about you, you know. She says you look tired. He used insults wrapped in concern, just like my mother. It was no wonder they loved him. He fit right in. Now, as I prepared for this dinner, the pieces fell into place. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a grifter. He was marrying Nancy, sweet, naive, spoiled Nancy, because he thought our family had money. He didn't realize that the family money was mostly tied up in the failing hardware store and the house. He didn't realize that I was the only one with actual liquid assets and a solvent future. He was using Nancy, he was mocking me, and he was playing my parents for fools. I put on my dress. It was a deep navy blue, tailored and sharp. It didn't hide my body, it armored it. I applied my makeup with precision, covering the dark circles under my eyes, highlighting my cheekbones. I looked into the mirror. I didn't look like the sick, tired daughter they expected. I looked like a prosecutor walking into a courtroom. I grabbed my purse. Inside, tucked neatly into a manila envelope, were the printouts, the DMs, the photos, the receipts. I checked my reflection one last time. Nancy hasn't seen everything yet, I whispered to the empty room. I walked out the door, ready to ruin Thanksgiving. The valet at Le Jardin sneered slightly as I pulled up in my 7-year-old Honda Civic, sandwiched between a matte black G-Wagon and a sleek, silver Porsche. The Porsche was Derek's. Or rather, the bank's Porsche that Derek was leasing at an APR that would make a loan shark blush, another detail I had gleaned from his credit report earlier that afternoon. I stepped out of the car, the cool evening air biting at my exposed skin. I tightened my trench coat, clutching my purse against my side. I could feel the rectangular outline of the manila envelope inside. It felt heavy, like a loaded weapon. Inside, the restaurant was a cathedral of pretension. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen tears, and the air smelled of truffles and old money. My family was already seated at a large, circular table in the center of the room, a prime spot likely secured by dropping Derek's name. I paused by the hostess stand, taking a moment to observe them from a distance. It was a perfect tableau of dysfunction. My mother was fussing over Nancy's hair, preening her like a show poodle. My father was laughing too loudly at something Derek said, desperate to be part of the boys' club. And Derek was checking his phone under TH. E-table, his thumb scrolling rapidly, a small, private smirk playing on his lips. He wasn't texting Nancy, who was sitting right next to him. I took out my own phone. I had set up a simple alert system earlier. Every time Derek posted on social media or was tagged, I got a ping. But I had also done something a bit more invasive. Utilizing a public records aggregator and his predictable username habits, I had located his active profile on a luxury lifestyle forum where users bragged about their conquests. I refreshed the page. A new post from user DKing88 posted 3 minutes ago. Dinner with the in-laws, Boar Fest. Can't wait to unwrap my real dessert later. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline. He was mocking us in real time. He was sitting 5 feet away from the woman he was marrying, surrounded by the family he was swindling, and complaining to strangers on the internet. I walked toward the table. "Elena, you made it," my mother called out, her voice pitching up an octave to ensure the neighboring tables knew she was a welcoming matriarch. She scanned my outfit, her eyes narrowing slightly at the sensible heels. "And you're on time. Miracles do happen." "Hi, Mom, Dad." I nodded to them, ignoring the barb. I turned to Nancy. She looked beautiful, glowing with that specific radiance that comes from being the center of attention, but there was a fragility to her smile. She looked tired. "Hi, Nance, you look great." "Thanks, Elle," she said, squeezing my hand briefly. "I'm glad you came. Derek said you were super busy with work stuff." "Always busy," Derek interjected, flashing his veneer-white teeth. He didn't stand up to greet me. "Grab a seat, Elena. We already ordered appetizers for the table. Hope you don't mind." I sat in the only empty chair, directly across from Derek and Nancy. The positioning was perfect. I had a direct line of sight to his face. "So," Uncle Jerry boomed from the end of the table. Jerry was my mother's brother, a loud, brash man who had made a small fortune in car dealerships and thought honesty was just an excuse to be rude. "This is the financial wizard, huh? The one checking the books." "That's me," I said, unfolding my napkin. "Find any buried treasure?" Jerry laughed, slapping the table. "You could say that," I replied, my eyes locking onto Derek's. Derek's smile faltered for a nanosecond, a flicker of unease crossing his features before he masked it with a sip of scotch. "Elena is very thorough," he said smoothly. "But you know how it is, Jerry. Weddings are expensive. Gotta spend money to make memories, right?" "Right," my father chimed in, "and nothing is too good for my Nancy." The waiter arrived then, balancing a large tray. He began placing intricate plates of beef carpaccio, lobster risottos, and truffle fries in front of everyone. He moved clockwise, serving my father, my mother, Uncle Jerry, Nancy, Derek. And then he stopped. He looked at his tray. It was empty. He looked at me, then at the table, then back at his tray. Apologies, madame, the waiter stammered, looking at his notepad. I seem to be short one entree. I have the fillet for the gentleman, the sea bass for the lady. I don't have an order for this seat. The table went silent. Oh, silly me, my mother gasped, covering her mouth with a hand that sparkled with rings. Derek, didn't you put in Alina's order when you called ahead? You said you were handling the pre-order to save time. All eyes turned to Derek. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked amused. Oh, wow, my bad, Derek said, shrugging effortlessly. I must have completely spaced it. I was so focused on making sure Nancy's dietary restrictions were handled. I guess I just forgot you were coming, Elle, with you being sick and all. He paused, letting the humiliation hang in the air for a beat too long. Then he grinned. But hey, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. You were complaining about feeling bloated on the phone. Maybe you don't need the calories anyway. Get a salad. It's better for the recovery. A few chuckles rippled around the table. My father smirked. Uncle Jerry let out a guffaw. He's got a point. Keep it light, Alina. Swimsuit season is around the corner. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Just order a side salad, Alina. Don't make a scene. We can share some of the fries if you're desperate. I sat there, frozen. The heat rose in my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from a rage so pure it felt like it could melt the silverware. They weren't just excluding me, they were erasing me. They were telling me, publicly, that my sustenance, my presence, my very existence was an afterthought. I looked at Nancy. She was looking down at her plate, avoiding my eyes. She knew this was wrong, but she wouldn't speak. She never spoke. It's fine, I said, my voice quiet. I'm not hungry. See, problem solved, Derek said, cutting into his steak. So, Jerry, tell me about this new dealership location. I reached into my bag and touched the cool paper of the envelope. Eat up, Derek, I thought, because you're going to choke on the check. The dinner progressed in a blur of clinking cutlery and self-congratulatory conversation. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, my empty placemat, a stark white flag of surrender in their eyes. The waiter had awkwardly placed a small basket of bread near me, clearly pitying me, but I hadn't touched it. I watched Derek. I watched him charm my father with talk of market volatility and asset allocation. I watched him touch Nancy's arm possessively whenever he made a point, as if she were a prop in his presentation. The wedding is going to be the event of the season, my mother declared, sipping her third glass of Chardonnay. The floral arch alone is costing a fortune, but Derek insisted. He said, only the best for my queen. Actually, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the chatter like a knife drop. The table quieted, my mother frowned. Alina, please, don't interrupt. I was just looking at the floral budget, I continued, keeping my tone conversational, almost bored. It's interesting you mention the arch, because I noticed a discrepancy in the vendor list. Derek stopped chewing. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. What discrepancy? Well, I said, leaning forward slightly, the florist listed in the budget Petals and Vows quoted us $5,000, but I saw several outgoing payments of $200 and $300 to a different merchant code. Lux Blooms Express. Same-day delivery service. Very high-end. I looked at Nancy. Did you get any surprise flowers lately, Nance? Like, maybe every other week for the last 6 months. Nancy looked confused. No, Derek brings me roses sometimes, but just from the grocery store. He says he likes to pick them out himself. Right, I said, turning my gaze back to Derek. So, Derek, if the wedding flowers are prepaid to the vendor and Nancy isn't getting these expensive deliveries, who is? The air at the table shifted. It wasn't the explosion yet, it was the hiss of a fuse being lit. Derek wiped his mouth with his napkin, his movements slow and deliberate. He laughed, but it was a dry, hollow sound. God, you really are an accountant, aren't you? Boring us with line items at dinner. It's not boring if it's theft, I said calmly. Alina, my father barked, slamming his hand on the table. That is enough. You are accusing him of stealing now, just because you didn't get a steak. I'm not accusing him of stealing, Dad, I said. I'm asking a question. Where is the money going? Because according to the books I reviewed, the ones you asked me to review, there's about $15,000 missing from the wedding fund. And it didn't go to flowers. Nancy's head snapped up. 15,000? Derek, you said we were under budget. We are, Derek insisted, his face flushing a light pink. He turned to Nancy, his voice dropping to that manipulative, soothing register. Babe, listen to me. Your sister is confused. She's reading the internal transfers wrong. Those payments, they're deposits for the honeymoon. I was keeping it a surprise. He looked at me with a glare that promised retribution. I booked us a private villa in the Maldives. I've been paying it off in installments so it wouldn't hit the main account all at once. I wanted to surprise you at the rehearsal dinner. Oh, my mother gasped, clapping her hands. The Maldives? Oh, Derek, that is incredibly romantic. Nancy melted. The suspicion vanished from her eyes, replaced by adoration. Really? You did that for me? Of course, Derek said, reaching for her hand and kissing it. I'd do anything for you. Unlike some people, I don't care about the cost. I care about the experience. He shot a look of triumph at me. Sorry to ruin your gotcha moment, Alina, but maybe next time, ask before you try to audit my love life. My mother glared at me. You should be ashamed of yourself, Alina, trying to ruin a surprise like that. Jealousy is a very ugly look on you. Yeah, Alina, Uncle Jerry chimed in, pointing a fork at me. Let the man love his wife. Stop counting pennies and start counting your blessings that they even invited you. I felt the familiar sting of defeat, the gaslighting washing over me. He was good. He was very, very good. He had improvised a lie about the Maldives instantly. But lies have a mass. They have a weight. And he had just added another heavy stone to the structure he was building on quicksand. The Maldives, I repeated, nodding slowly. That sounds lovely. Which resort? It's a private island, Derek said quickly. You wouldn't know it. Fair enough, I said. I reached for my water glass. I guess I was just confused because the merchant codes for those payments were for a local delivery service in the city, and the GPS metadata on the receipts was for an address in Lincoln Park, not the Indian Ocean. Derek Fr. O's, the color drained from his face for real this time. GPS metadata, he whispered. Forensic accounting, Derek. I smiled, a thin, razor-sharp expression. I don't just look at the numbers, I look at where they live. The silence this time was different. It wasn't the awkward silence of a missed order. It was the tense, vibrating silence of a predator realizing the prey has teeth. Lincoln Park, Nancy asked, her voice trembling slightly. Who do we know in Lincoln Park? Nobody, Derek snapped, his voice too loud. She's lying, Nancy. She's making it up. Metadata, please. She's trying to sound smart because she's embarrassed she's single and eating a side salad. He turned on me, his charm evaporating, revealing the bully underneath. You know what your problem is, Alina? You're bitter. You can't stand that Nancy is happy. You can't stand that she's successful, beautiful, and marrying a guy who actually makes money. You're sitting there with your little spreadsheets trying to tear us down. I'm trying to protect her, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. Protect her from what? A luxury vacation? Derek stood up, throwing his napkin on the table. I don't have to listen to this. Mike, he said to my father, I love your daughter, but I cannot sit here and be disrespected by this dried-up bureaucrat you call a daughter. Elena, my father stood up too, his face purple. Apologize now. No, I said. Excuse me, my mother hissed. I said no, I won't apologize for doing the job you hired me to do. I stood up slowly, facing them all. You asked me to look at the finances, I looked, and I found that Derek isn't just spending money on surprises. He's tens of thousands of dollars in debt. His credit cards are maxed out. That lease on the Porsche? It's in default. He's using the wedding fund, your money, Dad, to pay the minimums on his gambling debts. Liar, Derek shouted. He looked wild now, desperate. Nancy, don't listen to her. She's sick in the head. She's been popping pills for her bronchitis all week. She's probably high. I have the credit report right here, I said, reaching for my bag. I don't want to see your fake papers. Derek lunged slightly, as if to grab my bag, but Uncle Jerry stood up and blocked him. Not to protect me, but to maintain order. Hey, calm down, Jerry shouted. Everyone sit down. She is ruining my engagement dinner, Derek yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. She's jealous, look at her, she's a mess. Nancy was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Elena, please. Stop, just stop. If Derek says it's for the honeymoon, I believe him. Please don't ruin this. Her plea broke my heart. She was so conditioned to keep the peace, so terrified of rocking the boat, that she would choose a comfortable lie over a painful truth. Nancy, I said softly, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I love you. If you loved her, you'd shut up, my mother screamed. Get out, Elena, leave. You are not welcome at this table. I'm not leaving, I said, not until I finish my report. I'm calling security, Derek said, pulling out his phone. I'm going to have you thrown out. Go ahead, I challenged him. Call them. Ask them to check the security footage of the parking lot from last Thursday. The night you told Nancy you were working late, you were here, at this bar, with a blonde woman who definitely wasn't a client. Derek stopped dialing. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. I didn't just check the numbers, Derek, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried across the silent table. I checked the timeline. The atmosphere was electric. The other tables were watching us now. The waiters were hovering nervously. You're crazy, Derek muttered, but the fight was draining out of him. He looked like a trapped rat looking for a sewer grate. Maybe, I said, or maybe I'm just the only person at this table who actually pays attention. Uncle Jerry, sensing the implosion of the evening and perhaps trying to salvage the celebration he had flown in for, tapped his spoon loudly against his champagne glass. Clink, clink, clink. All right, Jerry bellowed, forcing a jovial smile that looked more like a grimace. That's enough bickering. We're a family, damn it. Families fight, but they forgive. We're here to celebrate Nancy and Derek. Let's get some drinks in us and wash this sour taste away. He raised his glass high. To the happy couple, and to family honesty, because even when it's ugly, we stick together, to honesty. My parents raised their glasses, desperate for the lifeline. To honesty, they echoed, glaring at me to join in. Nancy hesitated, then slowly raised her glass, her hand trembling. Derek let out a breath, composing himself. He smirked at me, thinking he had survived. He raised his glass. To honesty. I looked at them, I looked at their relief, their willingness to sweep everything under the rug, just to keep up appearances. I picked up my water glass, I stood up tall. To honesty, I repeated. I turned my body fully toward Derek. I locked eyes with him. Congrats on the engagement, Derek, I said, my voice clear and projecting to the back of the room. Oh, and Nancy hasn't seen everything yet. Do you mind showing her your DMs with Jennifer? The name, Jennifer, hung in the air like toxic smoke. It wasn't just a name. In our circle, in Nancy's life, there was only one Jennifer who mattered enough to warrant a specific anxiety. Jennifer was Nancy's college roommate. Jennifer was the maid of honor. Jennifer was the woman who had helped Nancy pick out her wedding dress 3 weeks ago. Derek froze. It wasn't a figure of speech. He went completely, statue, still rigid. His glass was halfway to his mouth, tilted for a toast that would never happen, and his eyes, previously full of arrogant fire, went dead and flat. Nancy turned her head slowly. The movement was mechanical, like a doll with rusty gears. She looked at Derek, then at me. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the pin-drop silence of the restaurant, it sounded like a scream. Jennifer, she asked. My Jennifer, my maid of honor. No, Derek shouted, the glass finally slamming down onto the table, sloshing champagne over the white linen. No, of course not. Elena is insane. She's talking about some client, a consultant named Jennifer. I told you, Nancy, don't listen to her. A client, I repeated, my voice calm, almost clinical. I reached into my bag. The moment had come. I didn't rush. I wanted them to feel every second of this. I pulled out the manila envelope. It was thick. Does this client usually send you selfies from our parents' driveway while Nancy is inside trying on veils? I opened the clasp. I slid the first sheet of paper across the table. It spun slowly on the smooth cloth and came to a stop directly in front of Nancy. It was a printed screenshot, high resolution. It showed a text thread. Contact Jen Jim date October 14th. Message: she's trying on the ball gown. It looks ridiculous, like a meringue. God, I can't wait until this is over and we can take that trip. Put the flight on the business card, old man. Nancy stared at the paper. Her hands were shaking so violently she couldn't pick it up. She just leaned over, reading the words, her breath hitching in her throat. That's Jennifer's profile picture," Nancy whispered. She looked up, tears pooling in her eyes. "Derek, that's her number." "It's faked," Derek roared, standing up. "She photoshopped it. Alina has always hated me. She's trying to frame me." "Sit down, Derek," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I held the deck of evidence. I was the dealer, and I was dealing him a losing hand, card by card. "Here is the credit card statement," I said, sliding the next sheet to my father. "Dad, look at the highlighted line, October 15th. Southwest Airlines. 2 tickets to Cabo, one for Derek, one for Jennifer blocked under a guest ID. Paid for with the wedding floral budget." My father grabbed the paper. He adjusted his glasses, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of beet red. He scanned the lines, his lips moving silently as he crunched the numbers. "And here," I said, sliding a photo toward my mother. "This is from last Thursday, when Derek said he was at a bachelor party. This is a time-stamped photo from the security camera of the jewelry store downtown. He's buying a diamond tennis bracelet." My mother looked at the photo. She looked at the bracelet on the wrist of the blonde woman Derek was holding onto in the grainy image. That's the bracelet Jennifer wore to brunch on Sunday," my mother gasped. She looked at Derek with pure horror. "She told me it was a family heirloom." "It's an heirloom, all right," I said coldly. "Bought with Dad's retirement savings." Derek looked around the table. The walls were closing in. The charm was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that was left was a cornered, pathetic man. "You don't understand," Derek stammered, looking at Nancy. "Babe, please, it was a moment of weakness. She came on to me. She's crazy. I was trying to break it off, I swear." "You were trying to break it off by taking her to Cabo?" I asked. "Shut up, Alina." Derek lunged across the table, his hand reaching for the papers. "Give me those." Hey, Uncle Jerry was up in a flash. He might have been a blowhard, but he was family. He grabbed Derek by the shoulder and shoved him back into his chair with surprising force. "You don't touch her. You sit your ass down." "Nancy," Derek pleaded, ignoring Jerry, ignoring me. "Nancy, look at me. We're getting married in 2 weeks. The deposits are paid. The guests are invited. You can't let your jealous sister ruin our life. We can work past this. Every couple has bumps." Nancy slowly stood up. She picked you. The photo of the text message. She read it one more time, like a meringue. She looked down at her engagement ring. The diamond sparkled under the chandelier light. A diamond I knew for a fact was lab-grown, though he had charged my father for a natural stone. "You mocked my dress," Nancy said softly. "What?" Derek blinked. "You cheated on me. You stole from my father. But you and my best friend laughed at me." Nancy's voice gained strength. She looked up, and for the first time in her life, I saw the steel in her spine. "You think I'm stupid. You think I'm just a prop." "No, baby, no." "Don't call me baby," she snapped. She pulled the ring off her finger. It came off with a struggle, leaving a red mark on her skin. "I might be naive, Derek," Nancy said, her voice shaking with rage. "I might be spoiled, but I know when I'm being sold a lie." She didn't hand him the ring. She dropped it into his half-full glass of champagne. It made a small plink sound that felt louder than a gunshot. "Get out," Nancy said. "Nancy, you're making a mistake." "I said get out," she screamed, a primal sound that silenced the entire restaurant. "And Derek," I added, my voice cutting through the tension. "Check your email. I just forwarded this entire file to Dad's lawyer. And the police. Embezzlement over $10,000 is a felony in this state." Derek's eyes went wide. He looked at my father, who was standing now, his fists clenched at his sides. He looked at Uncle Jerry, who was cracking his knuckles. He looked at the waiter, who was watching with wide eyes, holding the bill. Derek didn't say another word. He grabbed his jacket. He didn't wait for the valet. He turned and practically ran toward the exit, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the wreckage of a destroyed future. My father sank into his chair, putting his head in his hands. "My money," he groaned, "the business accounts." My mother was weeping, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. The wedding, the invitations. Nancy stood there, trembling. She looked across the table at me, at the sister she had ignored, at the sister she had let them mock not 20 minutes ago. "Elena," she whispered. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry." "No," Nancy said. She wiped her face, smearing her mascara. She looked at the empty seat where Derek had been. Then she looked at the menu. She picked it up. "Waiter," Nancy called out, her voice cracking but determined. The stunned waiter stepped forward. "Yes, miss." Nancy pointed to me. "Bring my sister a menu," she said. "And bring us the wine list, the real one, not the house red Derek ordered." She looked at me, her eyes red but clear. "And bring her a steak, medium rare, and the lobster mac and cheese." "Nancy, you don't have to," I started. "Yes, I do," she interrupted. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was tight. "You just saved my life, Elle. You're eating. We're all eating." The fallout was swift, brutal, and deeply satisfying. Derek didn't make it far. He was arrested 2 days later at O'Hare Airport, attempting to board a flight to Miami using a credit card he had stolen from my father's business ledger. It turned out I wasn't the only one he had scammed. There were 3 other families in the tri-state area who knew him as a financial advisor, and the FBI had been building a case for months. My dossier was just the final nail in a very large coffin. The wedding was canceled. The non-refundable deposits were lost, but thanks to my documentation of fraud, the insurance kicked in for the bulk of the venue costs. Jennifer, the maid of honor, vanished from social media and moved back to her hometown in Ohio within the week. I heard through the grapevine she had tried to contact Nancy once, claiming she was manipulated by Derek, but Nancy had blocked her number without a word. But the real change happened inside the house. A week after the dinner, I was at my parents' house, sitting at the kitchen table. But this time, I wasn't hidden away in a guest room with a laptop. I was at the head of the table. My father sat opposite me, a stack of ledgers between us. He looked older, more tired, but for the first time in my life, he looked at me with respect. "So," he said, adjusting his glasses, "the forensic audit shows we can recover about 60% of the liquid assets if we file the civil suit immediately." "Yes," I said, pointing to the spreadsheet. "I've already drafted the affidavit for the bank. They'll freeze his remaining accounts by noon. You won't get everything back, Dad. The travel, the hotels, that's gone, but the hardware store is safe." My father nodded slowly. He closed the folder. He took a deep breath. "Elena," he said. His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. Emotion wasn't his strong suit. We." He stopped. He looked at my mother, who was busy making coffee, her back to us. She had been usually quiet all week. "We treated you badly," my father said finally. "At the dinner and before." "Yes," I said, "you did." "I thought," he sighed, "I thought you were jealous. I thought you were just difficult. I didn't see that you were the only one watching out for us." "I'm not difficult, Dad," I said softly. "I'm just detailed, and I don't like liars." My mother turned around. She placed a mug of coffee in front of me. It was black, just how I liked it, not the sugary latte she usually tried to force on me. "I'm sorry, Alina," she said. Her voice was small. "I was so obsessed with the wedding, with the image of it. I forgot to look at the man. I forgot to look at my daughters." She reached out and touched my shoulder. "You looked beautiful that night, even in that trench coat." It was a clumsy apology. It didn't erase years of comments about my weight or my job, but it was a start. Nancy walked in then. She was wearing sweatpants and a messy bun, no makeup. She looked exhausted, but she also looked free. She carried 2 plates of leftover Thanksgiving pie, the real Thanksgiving dinner we had finally eaten, just the 4 of us in a quiet, somber, but honest atmosphere. "Are we talking numbers?" Nancy asked, sliding a plate in front of me. "Because I don't want to hear them. I just want to know if he's going to jail." "He's going to jail," I assured her, taking a forkful of pie, "for a long time." Nancy sat next to me. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm sorry I didn't order you food," she whispered. That was the worst part. I let them treat you like you didn't exist." "It's okay," I said, leaning my head against hers. "I'm full now." And I was. I wasn't just full of pie. I was full of a strange, quiet peace. I had walked into the fire, burned down the lies, and dragged my family out of the wreckage. I wasn't the golden child. I would never be the one they bragged about at parties for being sparkly or charming. I was the accountant. I was the one who checked the receipts. I was the one who saw the truth. And for the first time, they knew it. I took another bite of pie. It tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. "So," I said, opening a new tab on my laptop, "since we aren't paying for a wedding anymore, who wants to see the budget I projected for a family trip? A real one, somewhere with hiking." My mother groaned, Nancy laughed, my father actually smiled. "Let's see the numbers," my father said. I turned the screen around, and we began to plan.